Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Halsey, and I'm the event specialist here at EDB. I will be your host today for our webinar, New Integration Options with Postgres Enterprise Manager 8. I'm joined today by Anthony Waite, Senior Product Manager, and Scott Grant, Product Marketing Manager. Now, before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items to go over. So this presentation is being recorded. We will be sharing the recording along with the slides after the broadcast. The lines are currently muted. If you have a question, please feel free to submit it in the question panel. Today's session is scheduled for 1 hour. We expect the presentation to last most of our time, and we will allot any extra time for Q&A. If we do not have time to address all questions, we will follow up afterwards with any attendee whose question was not answered. Now, without further ado, I hand it over to Scott and Anthony.
Great, thanks,
Excellent.
Molly.
Thank you, Molly. Actually, before I get into that first poll there, I just want to do a real quick thank you for joining us. I won't go on a long 2020 speech because we all have heard a million of those, but we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here in December. We're all trying to close out the quarter and the year. So thank you to anyone, any new listeners and anyone who's, and especially if you've been here repeatedly, checking out our webinar content. This will be our last one for the year, and we're going to go over what's new in Postgres Enterprise Manager. And we are going to kick it off with a poll.
Yes, so launching this very first poll, we have, are you currently using PEM? The options are yes, no, or not yet, planning to use. So we'll give everyone a little bit of time to answer. Already within the first 12 seconds, we had 58% of the audience answer. We'll give everyone just a little bit more time. We're almost hitting 70%. So we got a lot of people very active this morning. 80%, we'll give it just another 5 seconds for any last people who want to throw an answer in. All right, here are the results.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we're at about a third using it. Okay, good to know. Thanks everyone for hopping in on the poll. That helps us kind of frame our talk here. Great. Alrighty, quick view of the agenda now. We're going to talk about a little bit about why you would use Postgres Enterprise Manager and a little context around what it is and how it fits into the EDB product suite. We'll get into what's new. The big focus today, as you know from the title, is integration. So we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with the REST API, and webhooks were just launched very recently. And we'll cover a few other notable features that are kind of quick to review, just a nice to know if you are using PEM or are planning on possibly using it in the future. And there will be an actual video demo of how the webhooks work. Key takeaways here are that the webhooks are a new way to push notifications to other systems. We've had a lot of customer requests for that. Anthony, our product manager, will be speaking to that in a moment. We've expanded the REST API. It's been there for a while, but we made some significant improvements and added additional endpoints this year to give you more flexibility for integrations. And we've added additional support for open source Postgres in PEM, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about that as we go. So why Postgres Enterprise Manager? First off, what is it actually? And it's an interface you can use to control and optimize Postgres. It's got management and administration built in, monitoring and alerts, and tuning and diagnostics. It's browser based. There's a pretty easy to use GUI that you can get around in. There's a lot there. It's a favorite tool of ours. It goes along with a lot of other tools as well as our core database product in the EDB suite. It's a very popular one. Lots of our customers use it. And what's really notable is that you can use this, and some of our customers do use this as that single pane of glass cliche. You can do everything here, while others want to be feeding this, some of the data and diagnostics and alerts into other systems, and that's kind of the focus for today. Quick plug here. I promise not to go too far in the sales and marketing direction, so just bear with me. A lot of you aren't using PEM yet or are planning to, so I just want to give you a brief overview of how that fits in with the EDB product suite overall. So we have two main subscription types if you're going to work with EDB. In the software layer there. We do work well with Postgres, open source Postgres. We wouldn't exist without it. We love Postgres. Open source Postgres is awesome. And you can use our tooling suite with that, with our standard subscriptions. We also have what we call EDB Postgres Advanced Server. That's kind of a mouthful. We refer to it as EPAS, and that's our proprietary product built on top of open source Postgres. And you can also use that with our tooling suite. Now, in addition to that, we're not getting into these things today, but we have a lot of support and design and build services, we call them, that you can use with us as well. So the important part is that most of what we're showing you works with both open source Postgres and with our proprietary EDB Postgres Advanced Server. And again, this PEM product, it's not something you purchase separately, but it's included with all of our standard and enterprise subscriptions. So you could have a very minimal subscription level, and you're going to have full access to everything that Anthony will be showing you today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the superhero to my sidekick, our product manager, Anthony. He's going to talk a little bit about, in the first place, why wouldn't you use your other DBMS tools? Anthony, why would I want to use Postgres specific products?
Well, one of the reasons is that this particular product, Postgres Enterprise Manager, it's in its name, it's built by Postgres experts. So the product itself is, we stay on top of all the various releases in the open source community. So we're fully aware of new features, taking advantage of them. Even so, our back end of the product itself, what we call is PEM, short for Postgres Enterprise Manager, it also uses the Postgres. So it could be either the open source or EPAS, just as you mentioned. So this tool is, as you mentioned before too, it's a single pane of glass. And we've got some slides to kind of describe its overarching capabilities. It's just not a like an IDE focused on a specific, Postgres community in terms of management or administration of these databases, but it's also monitoring and alerting. So it's the glue, so to speak, of your Postgres estates. It can, take care of the development. So you can think of it, it's targeted toward developers and also for the DBAs, and being able to integrate, which we're going to talk about, into your ecosystem, your infrastructure that you already have.
Great. And before we dive into some of those details, we've got one more poll question.
Yes, so for the next poll, launching it now. The question is, what tools are you using for monitoring PostgreSQL? The options are Nagios, Datadog, Prometheus or Grafana, SolarWinds, Zabbix, or other. So already, first 15 seconds, we've had 30% of the audience vote. Answers coming in pretty fast. We'll give it just another, we're at 50% now. We'll give it another 5 seconds for anyone last minute just wanting to vote. All right, and here are the results.
This is interesting. Yeah, see here that Nagios and Zabbix are most commonly used. Actually, sorry, Prometheus and Grafana is, which makes a lot of sense. Open source is most commonly used, then followed with a tie with Nagios and Zabbix. By the way, the reason why I'm speaking to these numbers is for those that are listening to the recording, unfortunately, they cannot see these results. And that's the reason why we have it also on the poll on the slide. And that's why I'm kind of repeating what you're seeing now. So it's painfully obvious, but
Yep.
for the recording.
Yeah, and I think we're not shocked. There's a 60% say other. So the marketing side of my brain wants to get another poll out there to all of our customers. But Prometheus and Grafana is probably what we hear most commonly, along with all these other tools.
Absolutely.
So yeah, not shocking, but thanks for participating there. All righty. So just a little bit more about the product itself before I hand this back over. What's unique here, as we've been hinting at, is that you can really cover everything with Postgres Enterprise Manager. So you've got your managing in one interface. You can do the optimization here, monitoring and alerting. Again, we're going to be talking a lot about how to plug that into other systems, so you don't have to be going back and forth to PEM, for those alerts. And integration has been a really key theme to our roadmap and our release schedule throughout 2020. And we know that's very important to our customers. Again, you're all using lots of other tooling, and I think a lot of ops teams roll their eyes when they hear there's going to be another tool rolled out. So if you're among the many folks here who are not using PEM, and especially those of you who are considering it, you're probably going to be most interested in those integrations, so that you're not throwing entirely new tools at teams that don't directly deal with the database. You're going to have the specialized database management, and we're going to talk about how to plug it in. I think it's important to note here too that a lot of our own customers don't even use all these aspects of PEM. They may use one or two major aspects. Maybe they're just doing the management. Maybe it's their primary monitoring and alerting tool. But we get very frequent customer requests to work with our support and services team on how they can further utilize PEM. And most calls I've sat in on with customers and support and sales, there's a lot of talk around that. Our customers are literally asking, like, what else can I do? We really like what we're doing with PEM, and what else can we do with it? Because there's so much to unpack there. So I'm gonna hand it back to Anthony here, talking about how it's a complete solution. We've got it right in the middle of this sort of architecture overview here. So Anthony, let's hear your take a little bit about the market landscape of where this fits in.
Sure, you bet. And I do want to point out that this is this perspective of the market is from a Postgres perspective. So clearly, we're not talking about all the relational databases out there, focusing on that Postgres environment. So what you can see here is that PEM, or as we call the product, sits in the middle. It covers, as I mentioned earlier, has been mentioned earlier, it covers the typical, management and administration of Postgres states, like, for example, like PGAdmin and OmniDB, but it also does monitoring and alerting, like Prometheus and Grafana that was previously mentioned. There was, or Nagios and SolarWinds. So typically, what we don't see is a product similar to it, that was mentioned by Scott as this single pane of glass, where it can, again, the personas that it can target are the DBAs, the IT administration, the developers found within this tool. One particular product that is similar to PEM is Elephant Shed, which is actually a combination of open source tools and hardware that have been integrated together. So it's a different style of delivery mechanism. It's not a complete software solution in terms of, it's not just a software solution. So again, this is where we see a lot of our customers asking us about, how we compare, how do we integrate? For example, some of these companies, they've created standards on, a monitoring and solution tool such as Prometheus and Grafana. And the target of this presentation is all about integration and how we are, able to be that, as I mentioned earlier, that glue within this environment. So again, it's a solution that that is quite comprehensive, and you'll see that in its capabilities. On the next slide, please, Scott.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm going to pause there for a second. I found my one typo. I promised Anthony I would have some typo, something I missed, and I rebuilt this slide, and it says SolarWinds on the right. We should have PGAdmin over there. That's the big open source. Probably a lot of you are familiar with PGAdmin, so that was the marketing guy's typo. I got to fix this slide before we publish.
Oh, yes, I should have caught that myself.
Back to Anthony, now let's dig into the architecture and some of the functionality in the next couple slides.
Yeah, we're just going to treat this really high level. It's just kind of simplified, but there's essentially three aspects, three bullet items that are required. It's the first three that are mentioned there, where we have what we call PAM server. This is the backbone. This is the data repository that's running on PostgreSQL or EPAS. You have your choice. It also provides the web application in order to serve up web pages. And that's where the client comes in hand, where we have the web client, how you interface with the product, all the aspects of the product, the monitoring and the administration. And then we have what we call the agent, PAM agent. And this is where it's gathering information on all the servers, the databases, the instances that you have in your Postgres estate. This can be installed on another host. And when it's installed on another host, it's able to also provide the operating system details in addition to Postgres. So when this agent is installed on another host. If it's not, we can also monitor Postgres remotely. We just don't get that operating system information, as I mentioned. And then finally, we have the SQL profiler. This is an option. It's something that you can, it allows us to utilize our performance diagnostics dashboard, but, this is where you're looking at the statistical information of these queries that you're running. You get the explain plan based off of traces, and we provide a plugin for PostgreSQL in order to support this particular feature. So again, kind of mentioning how we make the open source PostgreSQL, we attempt to make sure all the features that are found in EPAS are shared with the open source community.
Excellent. And it's a bit of an eye chart here, but just to make one point, you can be monitoring, to make sure I'm right, thinking of this the right way, you can be monitoring a mix of open source Postgres or EDB advanced server, correct?
Absolutely, yes. It's your as I mentioned, kind of your Postgres estate, and so we don't differentiate between the proprietary EPAS or the open source PostgreSQL.
Excellent.
So,
yeah, that could be very handy if you're trying to do more operationalizing of Postgres. It's something we find a lot. So you might be utilizing open source on, maybe some smaller projects or apps or internal, and you want to get more out of that, and you're going to start working with EDB, maybe using our proprietary products. PEM can kind of tie that together to moving, moving kind of up the stack, so to speak, if you're going to be using other Postgres related products.
yeah, absolutely. Our customers are using a lot of our customers that may be migrating off of Oracle are utilizing EPAS because of its features in order to support that migration. We augment these capabilities to PostgreSQL for these former Oracle environments. So yeah, mix and match between, again, it's all targeted towards the Postgres estate. So in this slide, I had mentioned earlier before, we cover a lot. Again, we sit in, when we were looking at that market, looking at the Venn diagram, so to speak, we have these capabilities all found within this one particular software solution. So the area of management, where your developers are going in, we have a query and analysis tool where you can get, type in the SQL and get the output and analyze it. We have a query, we have a built-in debugger for a programming language, for PL, PGSQL, or for EDB's SPL programming languages of these particular functions. We provide that debugging. As expected, you would want access management within the product, job scheduling, where you can go in and schedule a particular backup at a particular time. You can mix and match with shell scripts and with SQL. within the tool. And we integrate with other EDB tools for backup and failover management. Specifically, we integrate with what we affectionately call BART, backup and recovery tool, and for EFM, the EDB's failover management for high availability. So, automatically built in there. And then the monitoring and alerting, provide dashboards where we're monitoring. We have, the capability, we provide like 200 plus already different items that we're monitoring with our probes. And you can also customize those. We integrate, we can notify through email or through SNP. We have audit log management, for security. And then, as mentioned before, we're monitoring the Postgres databases, both the open source and EPAS. And if that PEM agent is found on another server, we can also monitor the OS level. And the one area that's constantly people are asking for is how do I tune, how do I improve the performance of my databases? And so this is where we provide a detailed this dashboard of the diagnostics mentioned earlier, SQL profiling for where we get the explain plan for a query based on a trace, capacity management, where we have the ability to project how much a particular instance or a table may increase, and that you may want to take into consideration for that. So there's that projection. You can define, you can look at, do log analysis for performance improvements. And then a lot of these particular features, I just want to point out, they use wizards, and we also have a wizard for the configuration setup. I just want to point that out, that assisting you through that process.
Excellent. Yeah, there's a ton here. Again, I've seen calls where you could deep dive on just one or two of these things for a long time. I'll throw a quick plug for our YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with it already, you'll see a lot of deep dives, a lot of deeply technical webinars and recordings from events, specifically about PEM, about other EDB products. But yeah, if you want to dig into, really drill down into some of these, there's a lot of content out there, and there's more to come. So keep an eye on our upcoming webinars. But there's a pretty good history of what's going on with PEM there. So without further ado, we're going to focus a little more on what's new. Again, we can't dig into every feature of PEM in 40 minutes. So we're going to focus on what was new this year, and what we'll close with what you're all waiting for, which is the video demo of how to use those webhooks. So a quick summary here before I hand it back to Anthony. Some of the themes have been accessibility, security, and integration in particular this year. That includes getting certified for web content accessibility guidelines. Anthony will explain that in a moment as I stumble over it. We've updated our security guide. That's obviously hugely important, especially if you're operationalizing Postgres at an enterprise level. We've built in more support for open source Postgres into PEM. There's more features that will work with open source now. And again, the big focus we're going to get into is the API and the webhooks. So I'll pass it back to Anthony here for a couple of the details about the new features.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I know that the presentation says 8.0, and this is just this was a recent release. It was just December 9th that we released this, so you can find that on our download pages for EDB. But we're also going to be talking about work that's been previously done, and we'll call that out. Throughout the year. So it's last year we released 5 times, and so slowly but surely we've been obviously adding features, working with customers on their requests for enhancements. Now, for looking at the web client, this is browser based. We wanted to make it what a lot of people are familiar with is ADA compliant. The product is suitable for somebody that may have a disability. And so there's guidelines that have been established in regards to that. As you can see here, is affectionately called WCAG. And we have been working over a few years in order to do this. So it's the introduction was in 7.15 release where we introduced this. I do want to point out that the screenshot says 7.16. 8.0 is likewise has been certified for this, and it will be shortly published. It may be there today or by tomorrow. But the one thing that's interesting is that this certification is a self-certification. We go through the requirements, and we, in our best ability, we go through them and comply with them. And like I said, it's taken a couple years in order to do this, and there's not an outside committee that goes through this. So it's what we've stated that this is what we've complied. If you were to look at this, what they call the VPAT, the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, it will detail everything that's being looked at and if we comply with it or not. So, and want to point out that this is important for public sector. You've got the government, these federal agencies that need to meet these particular requirements. But also it makes the product just better for most users. I'm not getting any younger, and it's a little bit more color, the nuances between color, the font size, these different things on the background. These are all things that I appreciate as I become hopefully wiser. All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good one to highlight. I think sometimes accessibility is overlooked. It's good to know that you're complying with those standards for sure.
Yeah, and also want to point out is we've been going through we have received reports from like penetration testing of our product. We've been fixing them throughout the year, and the one thing, a request that we got from our customers is, can you provide us a guide in how to configure the product in a secure manner? And so what we've introduced with this release of 8.0 is this security guide on how to configure both the PAM server and likewise, and it's the architecture, but also the Apache. So it's important where we provide this information. You can see this, you go into our documentation and it's newly available.
Excellent. Yeah, and we mentioned earlier, we only kind of hinted at it a little bit, is that Postgres itself is complex. That's not a bad thing. You can do a lot with it. And I think that's why these types of things, these best practices guides are very common customer requests. It does take a little work to tune and set your Postgres instances to all of your requirements. Everything's customizable and extendable. So sometimes you need that helping hand, and that's a lot of what EDB works on.
Yeah, and likewise with the Apache, right?
Yeah.
We're combing through, making sure that we address CVEs and things of that manner, and putting best practices into a guide.
Yeah.
So as Scott mentioned too, we have been we've been embracing the open source community, where we have been providing technology that's found within EPAS, our proprietary version of PostgreSQL, where we've provided these capabilities for open source. And so one area within the what's new for 8.0 release is now the performance diagnostics, this particular dashboard. It's now available for the open source version of Postgres. And what we've done is we've made available what we call EDB wait states plugin that can be applied to these particular open source Postgres versions. And these wait events, what they're looking at is they're looking at locks, they're looking at the IO, the buffers, they're looking at CPU, and they're gathering all this information and providing it in this particular dashboard. So again, we want to make sure that those features that are made available, those capabilities that are available for EPAS are also available for Postgres. So, this has been a request from our customers. So yeah, we're excited about that. But I want to point out that this is, it's been certified with the 8.0 release of PEM, and it works with Postgres QL 10 or above in terms of installing that plugin.
Excellent. And now we'll really dig in here and get in more to what the API does and what's new there this year.
So we've had a REST API in PEM for quite a while, and over time, we've been making it much more robust by there was already mentioned adding additional endpoints, adding more additional information, giving context about these endpoints. But first of all, I do think we need to talk about the differences between the REST API and webhooks. But I want to point out for the REST API, this is a situation where the third party client, this is where they have to make a request from PEM server to get the information. So this is where they place a call. And so this is, in this example here, the client will be, at particular intervals, pinging PEM server for particular information. For example, has a particular threshold value, has it been, crossed? And so what's interesting about the REST API is that it's ideal for this monitoring or for these situations where there's constant data changes. And this is where, as a developer, you have more control. You control those intervals, right? You're placing those calls. And it's important to point out that when you're doing this, this is how whether you can with being able to do this, you can also figure out if is PEM online by making that call and not getting an answer back. And it's important to point out that it offers the CRUD capabilities.
Yep, and we have a little more detail on the next slide here, and we'll kind of circle back and talk about differentiators with webhooks.
Exactly. So you may kind of wonder too, why do we have these particular three vendors called out on this slide? I just want to point out these are customers. So we have customers that are integrating that are with these particular solutions. So I just kind of wanted to, and they're utilizing the REST API. And this is how they're going about do it. I obviously not including the customer names, but this is the end solution that they're targeting and they're utilizing. So we've got a very, as I mentioned before, kind of a very robust API with a lot of endpoints. You can retrieve information about the servers, about the agents, being monitored. You can also get back statistics from the probes. We provide all these templates in terms of getting that information back. You can also, even from a configuration perspective, you can copy based on be it the agent, the server, or the database, or at the schema level. So all these variations. So you can get all this information through this robust API. And again, want to point out that when you're going to use this is where, if there's going to be constant data changes, this is where you should consider the REST API. And we'll compare that with the introduction of webhooks later.
Excellent. Yeah, and then just one mention of, just this fall, we exposed some new endpoints around the alert states, thresholds.
Yes, and that's where we're on the slide right here from this for the REST API here. And so this is here, if you were to go into our documentation and look at the REST API, you will notice for the 7.16 release that was released in October, is that these are new endpoints. So it allows us to, get more information on, the current state of, of violations, from a threshold, the history of an agent, the server database, the current state of an agent or a server.
All right, and on to, this is really, I'd say the biggest thing this year that's entirely a new feature. A lot of the other new things have been building on top of features that were already there, but the webhooks have been a common request from customers, and at a really high level. Even someone like me can pretty much understand. With a REST API, you're doing a lot of polling. You're asking for the information. So if it's not ready, you've got to wait and you've got to poll again. Versus webhooks, which are triggered, event-based, and we're going to get into how you can set those up and customize those in PEM. But it's a way to sit and wait and just get the information triggered by certain events.
Great synopsis, yeah. Overview. So again, this is new for 8.0, and for this particular integration, it's ideal for situations where you're trying to integrate with like ITSM tools, these incident management tools, or a collaboration tool like being notified in like Slack or Jira. And whereas, the REST APIs were, being pinged or, being pulled from the client, this is where PEM server is going to automatically, based again on this a triggered event, like a threshold has been passed. Once this happens, it's automatically going to send it to the client. So this is where there will be a payload, a message sent to another system. And so it's really ideal for these situations where you want to keep things in sync. This is real time. You're going to get the information, whereas before with the REST API, it's all based on the intervals of how the client is polling PEM server. So, and the one thing wanted to point out too is, again, just like from the REST API, we have customers that have made the request for this new this new feature, and clearly they gave us, they want to integrate this product into. We've had quite a few customers. We constantly hear about ServiceNow integration, and so again. We've got a few customers that are planning to utilize this feature for ServiceNow, for MuleSoft, customer wanting to use it to integrate with Amazon CloudWatch, and Slack is something, this is which we've heard. We haven't had a customer specifically ask for it, but it's an integration that is available, and it's actually what we're going to demo today. It's something that, Slack is what we use within the company.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good point about ServiceNow. I think they're something like over 50% market share now. So it's not surprising to hear that those teams just want to get the alerts in ServiceNow. They don't want to be hopping over or getting a whole new set of alerts in there. So yeah, no shock that that's a big request. So we'll go over just a couple of quick things about Anthony will review what the webhooks are in PEM, and then we'll hop into the video demo.
Yeah, so when it comes to the particular endpoints, we'll see a demo of this. Is you need to provide the URL that you're going to make the call. So provide that information. You're going to provide a request method, be it post or put. So these are items that are required, but optionally, you could also be providing authentication details and information about the HTTP headers. So when we think about webhooks, we can also think them as similar to email groups. So you're going to be sending out an alert to an endpoint based on a particular level, right? You know, is this a high alert? Is this a medium alert? So you can select an endpoint or multiple endpoints for each alert level. And for each alert level, you can also, within the product, you can override the settings and disable at an individual alert level. You know, for particular, you can think about like when you're doing updates or things of that nature, where you just want to, you know, turn off the alerts for a particular server.
Nice, good way to avoid alert fatigue and get to what's important there.
Exactly. So you can see here that, you know, well, in the previous slide was just, you know, populating that text, the client with that text. And you can also have more information. You know, we've got placeholders that you'll see where we can provide additional information, where you can provide the particular alert, the level, the device, all this rich additional information can be provided in this this JSON format for a payload.
Excellent. And I will hand over the screen share. And Anthony is going to share that video and give us a little talk through on how to integrate these webhooks with Slack.
Alrighty. So again, this is a recording, but you go to the management, under the menu, under Manage Alerts for PEM, you can find that we have a new icon, the webhooks here that's being circled by the cursor. You can see here that we already have a Slack integration, but you can add integrations by simply going up to the plus icon to add a particular integration. We're going to take a look at the Slack one that's already been prepared for us. Gave it a name, it's with Slack, defined the URL. As I mentioned before, this is, you know, required, the request method. And the default is to enable it, but you can also obviously to disable it, come in here and disable it through this GUI perspective. Now the HTTP headers that I mentioned before, this is optional, can provide this information to enrich the notification. For the payload, you can see here that we've provided a template with all the placeholders that you can incorporate into the JSON. So you can see all the various states where we've got, for example, within this text, you can see here that we're providing the unique alert ID information, where the alert name, the server ID, the server name, going through here, the threshold values. So this is information that we'll be getting back within, you know, that will be provided in the Slack channel. And for that particular alert, we can come in here and we can select the alerts. And you can see here, it's defaulted to all of them, but we have high, medium, low, and we can just have cleared alerts where we can provide that particular information. And again, this is, and looking into to the alert itself, we have an alert for connections in an idle state. This is something that we're going to edit. This is where currently it's medium, and we're going in and we're going to change those threshold values rather from 10 to 1, 2, 3 in order to trigger a change here, in order to see a notification. So currently, you know, we're waiting for that that particular refresh, being able to, or that change of state. I also want to point out that you can, you know, again, override the alerts. I mean, as mentioned before, and you can see here based off the level, that alert level, we can come in here and alter that particular where we can override the alert if, as mentioned by Scott, you want to avoid alert fatigue or these false positives, or in terms of like maybe something's a maintenance is going on. So you can see here now that it's high, it's changed. And now when we go into the Slack channel, you can see that the current state is mentioned high. This is automatically triggered and sent to Slack. Current value 10, the threshold value is 123, which we changed. The alert name, and also the timestamp. So again, this was automatically triggered. It's it's been notified in Slack, and yeah, that was the presentation where you can keep your third-party clients in sync with the PEM monitoring. Oh,
Excellent.
let me see, stop share.
All right, I'll get back to the deck here. There we go. Well, thanks, Anthony. Yeah, that's pretty easy to follow along with, easy to set up. I think you don't have to be an engineer to understand what's going on. Really hoping this gives everyone some food for thought for 2021. It's a relatively new feature. And maybe you can kind of simplify across your platforms and your stacks and your alerts and all that kind of stuff, get everything pointed in the same direction like we all want to do. And hopefully this helps enable you to do that a little better. So just a quick review of what EDB does, because some of you might be new to us or we're new to PEM. Well, if you check out our website, we have a lot of leading Postgres contributors. We have a lot of expertise here, so we're ready to help you. Even if you want to stick with strictly the open source Postgres, we have tools to use with that. We have a ton of experience, not just with Postgres, but other databases, cloud platforms, everything. We've seen a lot of different architectures across our teams. So there's a lot of help here for you on the services and support side, in addition to our proprietary software and tools that you could also choose to use in addition to that. So before we get to the Q&A, Anthony, I'll let you kind of give the high level summary here, and we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, just again, the new feature for PEM in the recent release is Webhooks. And it gives you a different option in terms of integration, where if you have let's say something like ServiceNow, where you want to automatically be notified of a threshold change and have that in sync with ServiceNow, you can utilize webhooks in order to do that. Or as an example that we saw today with Slack, in the Slack channel being notified of this. So again, it's based off of where you're thinking about these events and that they're going to be automatically pushed to the third-party client. But on the flip side, and so that's new. And then what we've been doing over the year is making the REST API more robust. Again, the API is it's more suitable for where there's constant changes of data, and you can think of like monitoring solutions, especially if you think of something like Grafana, right? Integrating with that, and this is and over time, working with customers, there's been requests made for additional endpoints based on the actual integrations within third-party clients, as I mentioned. So we've made it much more robust and suitable for these integrations where data is constantly changing, or it's like a monitoring solution. And then finally, just want to point out that, yeah, we love the open source community. And we want to make sure that those features that are found within PEM, for example, the performance diagnostics, that they're available to the open source community. And so you have the same, rich experience within the solution as, between both versions of Postgres.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Anthony. This has been great. We're going to get to the favorite part of the webinar for everyone, where Molly picks the toughest question she can find to pepper you with live in front of an audience.
Yes, we have some really great questions today. We had a lot of questions come in, so we'll just jump right in. One of the first questions we had was, it was a two-parter. are specific permissions required to install PEM on server? And what server permissions and database permissions are required for agents to monitor host and database?
It's a great question. There's some, it depends on particular features they're using. Like for example, there are some of the diagnostics where you have to be the super user, but I would have to get back with you on the complete list of, for these variations because it depends.
Okay, great. Another question we had come in was, are any pre-built integrations available?
We do have pre-built integrations with Nagios. So that is one particular third-party monitoring solution that we have integrations with. The other ones are through the REST API or webhooks or SNMP traps.
Nice. And by pre-built, that one's in the interface, right? That's in the GUI. You can just
Absolutely, yeah, exactly, yes. Yeah, I think maybe even through the demo, you may have seen like there was a tab for specifically for Nagios.
All
Good
right.
question.
The next question we have is about webhooks. Someone asked, do the webhooks work on HTTPS?
Yes.
Perfect.
Nice, easy one.
Super simple. We love it that way. Okay, another question we had come in right at the beginning was, what is the difference between SolarWinds monitoring for Postgres and EDB Manager?
I presume Pam. So one of the major differences between SolarWinds and PAM is that SolarWinds, the solution is a monitoring and alerting solution, whereas PAM also includes the management of the database and IDs, for example, of the database. These capabilities that you would find in like something like in pgadmin or OmniDB. So there's these additional it's a broader solution compared to the SolarWinds monitoring solution. It's a good question.
Okay, great. Another question we had was, does PEM fully support open source PostgreSQL deployments?
Fully support, yes. Deployments, yes. We can use it as a back end for the PEM server, and we can monitor it. So I do really want to get the point across that it works. PEM works on both. We want to be able to look at your Postgres state, right? And so we understand that there'll be a mixture of the open source version and EPAS, and so it can gather information. It can again monitor and also manage PostgreSQL, just like EPAS. There have been some nuances in terms of like some differences. And like, for example, in this presentation, we highlighted that what's new is that the performance diagnostics, looking at these wait states, the IO, the CPU, the locks, that information was only available, found in EPAS, EDB's advanced server. But we've now created a plugin for PostgreSQL to make it available, so you can also have that same capability. So by plugging that into the open source version, you can then also have performance diagnostics for both. It's a good question, but I just really want to kind of hit home on that. I mean, Scott, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Perfect, yeah.
All right, great. Well, we still have a ton of questions rolling in, but I think we have time for one more. One question that came in was about the audit log manager. They said it captures a lot of noise from PEM monitoring from the database. Is there a way to not audit or cut down the communication from PEM?
There are some tips, and I'm more than happy to kind of provide that as a follow-up. I'm going into that details, but you are also right that there's quite a bit of noise, and it can be a challenge.
All right, so that was an anonymous question. So whoever sent that in, if you just want to reply to your registration that you receive, that'll hit back to me and I can get it over to Anthony and Scott and we can get you an answer as soon as possible. That is all the time we have for questions today. I want to thank all of you for joining the webinar. Thank you, Scott and Anthony, for presenting. I hope everyone has a lovely day and you enjoy it.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.